Hello legends and super legends, welcome to Veloharmony. Somebody had asked about making some nutritional videos, so I'm gonna go ride in probably 45 minutes to an hour from now. It's almost mid-morning, almost 10 o'clock. So when I do my later rides, I wanted to share with you guys what I have for breakfast. So I laid out some stuff here, and what I'm gonna do is some of the food prep. What I usually do is I cut up stuff. I'm going to put, I use this bowl, and I already have onions cut up. I'm just gonna put it in the bowl. Probably about a tablespoon, maybe 2 tablespoons of onion. I use about 4 eggs or so. I use egg whites. So what I'm doing here is, I've got some sweet peppers cut up. That's what these are. I'm using up what's already cut up so that I can just, let me get a utensil here. Alright. I'm using up what's already cut up. I'm going to cut up some more later and just have them cut up. I always have them in these bowls in the refrigerator so that when I'm ready to make an omelet, I don't have much food prep to do. So this prep will be done later. About the only thing I need to do right now are the tomatoes. I'm out of tomatoes. And so that's about a tablespoon of each of these. This is green onions, already cut up. So I'm doing about a tablespoon. I just put them in the bowl ahead of time. And that's, this is onion I'm gonna cut up later. I already had some. That way I stay ahead of the game. So when I'm making this in the morning, I don't have time for food prep. Make it, eat, and go. What I'm going to do here is cut up the tomato. Just basically one ripe tomato. I've already washed it. I wash my tomatoes and I wash my vegetables before I put them in the fridge. So when they come out, they're ready to go. So let me move this bowl. Let me move the seed. Let's move this saucepan. But basically, I just dice them up. Slice across. Those of you who don't cook often, when you're cutting, you can't multitask. You can cut yourself. The best chefs in the world have cut themselves while cutting vegetables and stuff. Those of you who watch food TV, they show those contests, what they call chopped, and those guys are cutting. They're under pressure to cook several courses within a period of time, and some of them have actually cut themselves on the show. And what the guy did was he wore nitrile gloves because he didn't have time to deal with the wound, and he was able to finish the competition. So when I'm cutting, I'm looking at exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing this a lot slower than I normally do, just for this video. But I've been cooking and been in the kitchen for a long time. My mom taught me how to cook. I used to help with food prep. That's how I got into it. But basically, the tomatoes are all diced up. I don't know if you can see that really well. And so what I'm going to do is take about maybe a tablespoon amount, it's a good measuring gauge, and put that in there. And the rest of them are going to go in this bowl. Those bowls, I'm going to wash them before I put the new food prep in there off camera. I'll do that later on when I get back from my ride. So I do my food prep ahead of time. So I'm going to be cooking this afternoon for the family. We're fixing eggplant, stuff like that. I may record that as well. Maybe there'll be people that'll be interested in it. I make all my own gravies and everything natural. I don't buy anything pre-processed. So this is where the tomatoes will be stored. So the next time I'm making my omelet, it's already ready. So the only other thing I add to it, and this is strictly optional. You can put season all or whatever seasoning you have. I buy this from, it's freshly ground from the H-E-B bulk food department. This is called coconut curry powder. I don't put it in here. I put it after I put the stuff in the saucepan. I'm gonna leave that out here so you can see. I may move the camera over the saucepan later, but I just want to show you what I do. Normally I do the separation of the egg yolk at the sink because I deposit everything in the garbage disposal. I got this container to hold the egg yolk and the shells, and I'll transfer it to the garbage disposal and dispose. The reason I do that is if you break up your eggs and you put the shell in your garbage, within 24 hours it starts smelling. So we don't put egg shells in the garbage. You can put it in the garbage disposal, it doesn't harm it, crushes it up pretty quickly. So that's what I do. So since all the vegetables are already in the bowl here that you saw me put in there, what I'm gonna do is, normally at the sink I just use the side of the bowl, but just to show you, those of you who don't do this often, basically what you're doing is, break the shell, do it around the middle, because you're going to use the shell to separate. So you break the shell, and I hope you can see this very well. You separate the egg, just open the egg shell, and you will see the white fall into the bowl, and I caught the yolk. You want to use the shell to separate the white from the yolk. They have other things that you can buy, like egg separators. You don't need to. And this is the yolk. That's basically what's left. I'm hoping this shows on camera really well. I'm trying to bring it up to the camera. And this is what I'm going to dispose of in the sink. So I'm just going to place it in the carrier for a moment. And basically what I do is I just tap the egg on the side of the bowl, pop this shell. You can see the whites falling. I tilt it and drop the yolk in the other shell. And basically you can see the white continue to fall. And that's it. That's all that's left is the yolk. I don't particularly care for the yolk. Some people like it. It's fine if you want the yolk included in your omelet, that's fine. I just prefer egg whites, just from a taste standpoint. There's nothing bad about the yolk. I mean, it's more calories because it's more food, but it has really good stuff in there. I just don't have a taste for it when I make omelets. Just over the years, I've gravitated to egg whites. But if you don't mind, if you're one of those who eats the whole egg or don't mind it in your omelet, that would work. You don't have to separate it like I do. Even when I scramble eggs, I just do egg whites. For some reason, I've never developed a taste for the yolk. So all I'm doing now is I crack the egg. You can see sometimes you don't crack it perfectly. It's at the end. See how small this shell is. So all I'm doing is making sure I catch the yolk as I turn this so it falls in here. And then all the whites will just come out. So that's all that's left. And that's it. And it's pretty much separated. So this is what it looks like. I put the veggies in there first, and then I crack the eggs and put them in there. And that's what I'm going to dispose of in the garbage disposal. If you don't do that, your eggshells will stink up your garbage can. So I'm going to add the seasoning to it after I start cooking it. So right now I'm going to show you how I light up the fire. I'm going to light the flame, and I want you guys to watch. We use gas because you can control the heat a lot easier. So I started out at full power on here. I'm going to use this little non-stick skillet. I really like this. I use very little butter. You don't need much because I'm not really frying the egg. I just want the heat to solidify the egg. I was waiting for my teenage daughter to get out of here. That's what's been delaying me. Anyway, let's go. So I'm putting a film. I just put a little bit of the butter. The skillet already, that's one thing about gas, it heats up real quickly. It's already warm. So it's just melting a thin film on that. That's all you want because it's already non-stick. You could use Pam if you haven't, if you wanted to. We have it. I prefer to just use a little bit of butter. That's it. That's all I'm putting in there. Now I'm going to just pour the egg. It's on full power right now, high. I'm going to pour the egg. And I'm going to make sure that the vegetable stays centered because the egg is not going to start taking shape in the pan. I'm going to move the camera in a little bit and kind of show you what I'm doing. I'm going to add a bit of, let me get something to put the cooking utensil on. So I'm going to add a bit of seasoning. This is the seasoning I told you about, the coconut curry powder. You can season it with season all or whatever you have. Sometimes I'll use Tony Chachere's, but I've gotten a taste for this because it's got curry in it. It's got coconut mix in it. It's just a very good flavor. So I'm gonna put about probably a teaspoon around, I'm just putting it on top of the omelet, and then I'll bring the camera over and show you. Let me get the camera and show you what I've done. There it is. You can see the egg has already begun to take shape. I'm going to now turn down the heat here to low. The flame, you can see the flame. So as I go to low, it goes down. And you don't want to cook on high heat. And I'll show you once it's done. So now I'm gonna let it cook for probably about 3 to 5 minutes. It doesn't take long at all. And then I'm gonna start flipping it. Well, while this is cooking, what I normally do, I'm gonna put the, let me walk over here with the camera so you can see. I basically grab my bagels. I have plain bagels, that's what I like. These. You can get anything you like to eat with your eggs is fine. I prefer to use this. I'm gonna move it over here to where the toaster is. Let me set it down here. This is kind of a close view, but so basically what I do is I split the bagels like this. I split it. I just separate it and I slip it into the toaster right there. Put one on this side, and all I'm doing it for is to just kind of get the bagels nice and warm. And now I'll put some jelly and a little bit of butter on it. And let me film and show you that. So here now, I just set this to where it's gonna brown it. I put it about midway. And it's on. And when it's ready, it will pop out. So let's come back and check on the egg. This is the butter that I use, nothing special. Let's see, what's the brand? Land O'Lakes, that's what we use. You can use, I like it because it had canola oil. You can use any kind of shortening you have. You can use just oil, you don't have to use butter or Pam or whatever you have to just put in there. And you can see this, this thing now has solidified, you see that? So what I do is, the reason you want to use low heat is you want the thing to cook without burning, you know. That's what most of the top chefs, you know, when I read up on their stuff, I bought some classes online. Nowadays with YouTube, you can see people prepare stuff. But you don't need to cook with high heat. It doesn't take any longer. You don't get the food does not get to cook. And with eggs, you want to make sure it's solid when you eat it. That's what's recommended. I don't subscribe to drinking raw eggs. You can see a lot of the top is not cooked yet. But what I'm doing is I'm letting it cook underneath. You see now, because of it's a non-stick pan, let me put this utensil down. Now the egg moves. Look at that. So the little butter is just to give it something to cook with. I recommend non-stick pans because the other pans, they can stick to it and it's hard to move around. So I'm gonna let it cook for a little bit. Let me move the camera back here. But while it's doing that, I start putting everything back up. I don't like a messy kitchen. Genius gonna where I put the eggs. So all of these, I'll wash them before I do my food prep later on today. Make sure they're nice and clean when I'm using them. So since the thing is in the toaster, I use just, this is like mango peach made locally, jelly. Wherever possible, I try to use the freshest stuff. Since it's made locally, I know it didn't store very long, as long as the ones that have all the preservatives and stuff in them. It doesn't cost any more than the other ones. So it just makes sense. And that's the toaster popping. I'm gonna bring the camera over here so you can see me work with the toaster. This guy, and I'm just going to, it just came out of the toaster. I'm gonna put a small film. I'm hoping this thing will show. Let me see, it will show what I'm doing. Yeah, I think that's good enough. So I'm taking a film of the butter, and the way I do it, I don't double dip. I take out the amount of butter I think I'm gonna need, and I'm done. Once I put the thing on the bread, on the bagel, I don't go back in the butter, because then you can just leave like crumbs in the butter. So I just do a thin film on there. You don't need a packet full of stuff. I'm hoping that shows well. Thin film, do the same thing on the other one. I put the butter on there. It's nice and warm. It melts right away. So I'm done with the butter. I do the same thing with the jelly. Since I've used this knife for the butter already, I'm gonna use the fork to take out the jelly so that you don't end up with butter in your jelly. It may seem trivial, but you start leaving stuff in there, they don't keep as long, and it's just, because whatever you leave in there might spoil quicker than the jelly or the butter. It's just not cool. That's just the way we're taught. So now I've got all the jelly I need, and I'm gonna take the tops and put the jelly on there. Put a film on one side. This is what I do. The rest of the people in the house don't necessarily do that. I always see stuff in the butter and stuff like that, so I'm always bugging them about it, and they say, oh, you complain too much and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, is it really that difficult to just pay a little more attention? So I'm gonna put this plate over here. I'll move the camera so you can see. So now, that's what I have. So that's the beginnings of my meal. And it took me a whopping 15 minutes so far, because while the egg's cooking, I processed that, you saw that. Now, I'm going to come back to the egg. It's now nice and solid. And I'm going to flip it halfway. It's like you fold it. You see that? Then you do the same thing from the other side. I'm doing this one-handed, so it's a little tricky. And now I'm gonna fold this side. So you can see some of the egg is still running here. They're not solid. I want it to be solid. So because it's on low heat, nothing burns. It's been sitting there for a while. So in about 3 minutes, it'll probably be ready. Because most of it has cooked. That's just excess fluid when I folded it from the top. And that's pretty much a professional looking omelet. This is what they make in the top restaurant. All natural stuff, just vegetables. You can add, if you got pieces of ham or whatever you wanted to put in the bowl before you put the eggs in there, you could do that. That's up to you. I just like to just put vegetables in there. And there's no limit of what kind of vegetables. Sometimes I'll put mushrooms and other things. But most of the time I just use the onions and the tomatoes and the sweet peppers. The sweet peppers are, you can literally eat this like this. They're not hot at all. Okay, so I have flipped the egg over now, and that's what you're looking at right there. I'm going to go ahead and transfer it. It's ready. I've turned off the stove. You can see the flame is gone. I flipped it over to that side and maybe like 45 seconds. That's it. So now I'm going to transfer it to the plate. It's kind of hard for me to do because I'm holding the camera and doing it. But you can see because it's non-stick, it's done. But what I usually do is, hopefully I'll be able to execute that. I turn it to where it just flips into the plate. Right side up, like that. There you go. It's tough to do with one hand. And now I'll move the fork. This is what they serve in the restaurant. They'll put a little strawberry or some cilantro on it and bring it to the table. And that's my breakfast. So, hope this helps some of you are looking for something different to try. I do this every time when I have a late morning ride or I don't have to leave out first thing in the morning. And sometimes I even do this after the Saturday rides or the long rides. So, keep getting your K's in, and this is where you get your fuel.